Yeah, hi, it's me, Big Ugly Jim, your smallest of the small streaming Andes. You know what? Let's start with this whole creation myth thing. This came out of the conversation we had yesterday, where we were talking about restorative justice, which is the sort of alternative to what we typically think of as like our justice system, and it's heavily involved in, at least in Canada, with Indigenous people. There's reasons for that. It turns out, gasp, be prepared to brace yourselves. Canada has lots of Indigenous people in our prisons. And as ever, one can look at those statistics and say, well, it is not proportional. The number of people who are in our prisons who are Indigenous is not proportional to the population of Indigenous people. So we have two choices. Either Indigenous people are just mean and bad and awful, or the system is stacked against them. Oddly enough, we decided that the system was stacked against them, because I say oddly because that's the actual answer, and most countries seem to go, I don't know, couldn't be that we're racist, couldn't be that we have systemic racism. That's not a thing that's real. But in our case, we recognize that. So I think it's 718.2E section of the Canadian Criminal Code specifically says, consider alternative measures of justice, particularly for Indigenous people. One of the things that feeds into the traditional Indigenous models of justice is the creation stories of a particular group. And the example they gave, and I can't remember the name of the group offhand, but their creation story started with the sky woman falling from the sky, and she was on her way down, plummeting to the earth. She was picked up and swooped up by some birds who safely deposited her onto a turtle. And the idea being that instinctively in that creation story, that because that's a core tenet of how this group interacts with the world and how this group sees their creation, that relates to how they focus the prioritization of their society. And in their case, it was very focused on being there and caring, and also a respect and appreciation of animals, which is a cool thing. And it's an interesting thing. It made me think about the Christian origin story, which essentially, and I'm going to be a bit of a dick here, but essentially, God was like, I want to make some stuff, spent a week, dibbity-dabbity-doo, zabam, created everything that we ever saw. And God gave man dominion over the animals. And when God saw that man was all horned up with nothing to fuck, he was like, hey, why don't I hook you up? I'll knock you out. I'll rip a chunk of your body out, make you a little plaything, and that'll be fun for, sexy fun. If you think about how what those roles are, right? You think about the role of man in this was simply a plaything for God. And the role of woman was simply a plaything for man. So from a creation myth perspective, men are the dominant, men are the superior, and women should be subservient, and all should be subservient to the great all-powerful God. And what happens in that story is nasty old woman, who of course is problem, she goes and can, first she eats of the fruit of knowledge, and don't let it, get past you that it was the tree of knowledge that was the concern. So she eats of the fruit, and she's like, oh shit, I understand some stuff now. I'm fucking naked here, dude. And then she gives Adam the apple, and he takes a bite because he's, stupid. All of a sudden, God shows up. He's very, very upset, and he kicks them out of the garden. We had everything, and we lost it because God was angry with us, because we're not cool enough to have a loving, caring God, is the sort of message there. So we have to be infinitely subservient to whatever the whimsy of the grand all-powerful God is. And that's an interesting thing. Like if you contrast that with the story I told earlier, and it made me think a lot about how that shapes our society. We're in a place right now where it would not be a stretch for me to say sometimes men don't seem to be terribly interested in what women want, and instead seem pretty hell-bent on controlling their bodies. Strange. But in a sense, if you consider that origin story, it kind of makes some sense because, God gave women to us. There are playthings, there are companions, they're meant to be subservient, so they should just, their bodies are our business. That's an interesting sort of corollary. You can read that book and pull whatever you want out of it. But a lot of the things that we're arguing about today in the political sphere come directly from this book, whether intentional or otherwise. I'll give you an example. Abortion. All life is sacred. God loves a good life. And cool, right on. Way to go, God. Glad you're doing your thing. Way to support the troops in my pants. That's not in the Bible. Much like the Constitution, there's nothing in the Bible that says, hey, don't have an abortion, especially after viability or after 15 weeks or once the zygote is capable of independent movement or something like that's not there. There is stuff in the Bible about wasting the opportunity for life, and the one that I think of most notably is the story of Onan, and we've talked about this on stream a bunch of times because it's one of my favorite Christian stories. His brother dies in battle, and God's like, you got to take your brother's wife as your wife. And Onan's like, okay, cool, she's chattel, so I might as well just, own that. But, it's my brother's wife. I don't feel good, I'll treat her well, I'll respect her, but I'm not going to do the husband thing. And God's like, oh no, motherfucker. You're gonna do the husband thing. You can do the husband thing all the time. I want to watch. And Onan's like, dude, I'm not cool with that. Like, this is my brother's wife. And God's like, so? Go on. Do it. Go on. Get in there. Well, that. Go for it. And Onan's like, I'm not good with this. And God's like, I'll fucking kill you. I will fucking kill you if you don't fuck that girl. So Onan's like, well, I don't want to die, so I guess I have no choice. But he didn't want to, make babies with her and stuff, so he pulls out. His seed was spilled in the dirt. And God then gave him a good murdering, because that's not okay in God's world. Doesn't matter that God's pretty cool with murdering all kinds of children, whether they're Egyptian or otherwise. In the book, he kills a lot of kids. And he has a very, I guess you could say he's very conservative, because cares about that baby right up until the time when it comes out into the world. But the minute that fucker's at, get a job, hippie. I don't know, it just feels very strange. Origin stories are always cool too, right? I mean, I'm a comic book guy. There's boring ones like, Thor. Thor's origin was, hey, I was born. Cool story, bro. Spider-Man's origin story isn't just that he was bit by a radioactive spider. The cool thing about Spider-Man's origin story is the lesson he learned. His Uncle Ben kept trying to say, with great power comes great responsibility. And he knew that, but, like every one of us, he just sort of like, yeah, I get it. Great responsibility. He goes to make some money with his newfound spider powers. He does some wrestling. And after the wrestling, he goes to get paid. And the guy's like, hey, kid, you're working for exposure here. Exposure dollars, they're the good dollars. You want those dollars, kid. Don't stick with me. We'll go far. Peter Parker's like, hey, fuck you, fella. And starts walking away. The bad guy grabs the cash box and goes running. And he runs right past Peter. And the guy's like, stop him. He's got the cash box. And Peter, very selfishly, doesn't accept his responsibility. He's like, hey, man. You weren't there for me. I'm going to be there for you. And that guy gets away. And, Peter's like, I'm looking out for myself now. It's cool, man. That's how I do. And he goes outside, and there is Uncle Ben dead. Because the guy who stole the money went to go, I think it was carjack Uncle Ben. And Uncle Ben was like, hey, no, you can't do this. And gets shot and dies. And this was the real origin of Spider-Man. Right? So his his creation story is one of he didn't listen to the lesson of power and responsibility. And as a result, he lost like the most important person in his life. So he ain't gonna make that mistake again. I'll tells you what. And I think that's a cool story. But yeah, that's, all of these origin stories. I never really think about how the origin of things leads dramatically to the shaping of stuff.
First off, I want to say thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed, please like and subscribe. It really does help me out. Thank you to my patrons that support me on Patreon. I am a little streamer, and these people are all really awesome for supporting me. I try to put up stuff at least once a week, and I live stream every Saturday at noon Mountain Time on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, like an old man. Again, thanks for watching, and have a kick-ass day.